Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Bill Jordan here with Art with Bill. Another edition of Fantastic Art today. And we have a guest all the way from Bermuda, Sharon Wilson, who's going to share with us some of her very special works. Not only she's an artist, but she must be a Renaissance woman because she writes stuff and she's doing all this other interesting stuff besides her work. But I'll let her tell you all about that. Hi, Sharon. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, and how are you, Bill?
Great. So listen, you're in Bermuda, right?
I am.
So what is it like there today in Bermuda?
It's sunny, blue sky. It's a beautiful day. Humidity is a bit high, though. And we don't have central air. So throw up the windows and try to catch a breeze.
Why don't you guys have central air down there?
Too expensive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good reason.
Yep.
So like, you ever get tired of being in paradise?
No. The color, you said you went to school in Hawaii, so you know something about how beautiful the ocean, the colors are just, I won't trade it for anything, Bill. Sorry.
Okay. Well, let's see how that works out into your work. All right. Can I move on to one of the first pieces?
Absolutely.
This is an exciting piece. What's this all about?
I spent a lot of time in teaching in public school. I was a public school art teacher for a number of years. And one day it dawned on me that what happens often with Black children is they may grow up in a house without their fathers there. They also may go to their grandparents' house and their grandfather isn't there. And what they have in front of them all the time are highly sexual images of people interacting. But they often don't see that other kind of relationship, that other kind of nurturing relationship across the sexes. And therefore, they are led to believe that those relationships are for other people and not for them. So it was very important to produce an image, and I actually found a couple which were in their 70s, and I asked them specifically, would you model for me so that I can paint a picture of a kiss so that I can show them to children? And they get so embarrassed when they see it. They're so unnerved by something so natural that I realized there was a need for them to see what a different kind of togetherness was.
So that's a good point. Why do you think that they became unnerved by looking at this image?
Well, when they turn on television, it's happening with white people. So white people are not really part of the world. But when they see it happening, oh, Miss Wilson, why did you show that? Ooh, they keep looking at it, but there's something uncomfortable about it. Not necessarily in a bad way, but uncomfortable. Different.
Right. So this couple, by the way, they don't seem to be in their 70s.
Well, they were, and it was funny too, because when I called to find out if they would model for me, they knew me in the community as an artist, but it wasn't like I had a special personal relationship with them. And they were kind of giggling because the idea of actually modeling while somebody photographed you kissing your husband wasn't anything that I ever had to do before. And they met me at the door, and I was really happy that they had agreed to be these models. And they were like, well, how do you want us to kiss,
Oh, okay. And how long did this piece take?
Oh, people always ask that question. I don't know. I normally have 5 or so paintings going at the same time. And when you hit a block in the road, you move on to the next one and you come back when you have the answer for it. So I don't know what to say about how long it took.
Well, really what I was asking is, like they're posing for you. How long was each session for the pose?
The photo shoot? Well, I was trained as an illustrator, and that's sort of how I think. So I came to them, explained what I wanted to do, and tried to get them in a place where they could be fairly comfortable in spite of the awkwardness. And then I would just move around them and do a photo shoot. And then I would go away and look at what I have and work from that. And actually, when they modeled for me was before digital imagery. So, you know, you're looking now back, yeah, back 20
Now,
years now.
for those who don't know, is there a difference between an artist and an illustrator?
I think so.
What, in your opinion, what is that?
Well, I think that aesthetically speaking, there are things which are acceptable that an illustrator might do, which aesthetically might not be as pleasing if a fine artist did it, where you choose to crop the image or what the intent of the image is, or issues like that. So for me, I think like an illustrator, I'm always thinking about the story, very literal stories. Who is this man? Who is this woman? What is their relationship to each other? How do we know, and what are the cues? Yeah. Could they be anybody's mom and dad? I don't want to sweeten the story. I want it to be authentic. And I want the image to be a positive image, because I think Black people have seen themselves in less than positive light most of their lives. So it's
so in a way, your claim to fame or your mission is to elevate self-esteem, right?
That is it, to uplift, transform, and inspire. That's what I'm about.
All right, here's another one. Let's look at this piece. Now, this is a takeoff. You know, the people are kissing. After they kiss and they have babies. So here's a piece on that.
Well, this one is more idyllic. But I picked it because it served a purpose, especially during the time that I produced it. No, I grew up, I was a child of the 50s. And I was very conscious of the fact that children's books didn't have anybody who looked like me in them. And that has hugely influenced what I've chosen to paint about and how I've chosen to portray my figures. So I admit that this is idyllic. I think this was probably during an era when I was very much in love with the work of the Impressionists. Mm-hmm. And wanted, believe it or not, I actually went through a period of time that I probably would not have acknowledged it to others, but whenever I saw an image that was done by the Impressionists, I wanted to know if it would feel the same when the faces were replaced with faces that looked like mine. And even though I realized that in a sense, I was making their worldview the standard and then measuring myself against it, it's almost as if I couldn't get out of that space unless I went through that space. So,
well, that's a good strategy.
Well, it was the only one, because it was the only thing I knew to do. I was trained in a world with European standards. I was a Black woman that went through that, who studied those artists, who walked away and tried to figure out who I was. But when the moment of consciousness came that that's in fact what I was doing, there was a great deal amount of shame that came with that somehow I could not have just jumped that stage and just went on and found a self that was myself.
And how would you define that moment? I mean, what made you different after that?
I think that the awareness of it, for instance, Mary Cassatt did the painting of her combing a child's hair. I'd done mine, and then what I actually started to do was put them alongside each other. I question now, did I want to know whether or not I was technically as good as, if I was proficient, exactly what was going on during that period of time, And of course, when you try to look back, you don't know, you don't have a way of knowing if you're rewriting the story as you look back and coming up with reasons for why you did it. But I was aware of going through the process, and I was aware of a kind of disappointment in myself, and I realized that I resented the fact that theirs was the standard, and yet it was the standard that I was measuring against, even though I resented that that's what was happening.
So I can infer from that. Can I infer from that that you have now abandoned that standard? You're on your own standard?
Yeah, I think that I grew out of it. I think confronting it, realizing that that's what was happening, was a big step towards going and finding a way that was more mine, and a message that was mine, that had less to do with another narrative and more what I wanted from my art. So, you know, every day waking up wanting to be better and better and better. And one day the question was, what do you want to be better for? What is it what's the end game? What do you want at the end? You just want to be better for the sake of it, or is this somewhere else? And that was the beginning of, no, I have a message. I have something that I want to impart to a specific audience. And then it was much easier to begin to find my own way. Still, I'm surprised how long it took to get to that point.
Let's scroll through these others. Let's scroll. Like, okay, we had this young man here, and for me, it's like this is the young man who was the baby, but in the last picture.
Well, when I did a series of paintings, he was a part of this series. It was called my Gold Collection. And I knew that there's a view that is held about Black boys, especially Black boys once they pass adolescence. Suddenly they're this frightening, intimidating group that has a lot of baggage dumped on them. And I try to get the message across to my audience. I decided I would go with the younger child, because there is a response towards the younger child that doesn't always hold when that child is older. And one of the things I found from finishing the series, I made a decision that I would take my art away from the traditional galleries and try to take my art directly to the people. So I looked for a space where there was, you know, a place that wasn't rented. We could just pop up for a day and put the art there and watch the people who came by and looked at it, who were people who would not normally go to a gallery. And it was interesting because of all the people who looked at this particular painting, all the white people saw a halo and all the Black people saw the sun. That was so interesting because you see what you expect to see. Mm-hmm. And if it's outside of the belief that you have about yourself, no matter how obvious it is, it's impossible to see it. And so this became a pivotal piece because it taught me a lot. Just that very small thing. I would ask people, what do you see? The only Black person that looked at this and saw a halo was a child psychologist. He was a Black male child psychologist. That was very interesting. We're talking about 50 people, maybe 50 people, and to a man, to a woman, they said the sun. I had the sun, and the white people said, yeah, a halo.
So which is it?
A halo.
That's what I thought. I said, what could it be other than that? I thought he was
that's what the results said to me. That's what they said. They said I thought it was the sun. So the idea of showing us in this way is not so typical, actually.
Okay, so in other words, the halo effect you're saying is atypical to this particular image.
To Black people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And when I took the image and I took it back to school, because this was a little boy that actually taught, and I projected the image up on the wall, so it was really large. And he walked in and I said, what do you think? He was about 8, very quiet, shy child. And he said, I said, who does it look like? He said, it looks like me. I said, it is, and what do you think of it? He said, I think, and his voice kept getting softer, I think it's beautiful. Significant that he had to whisper, I think it's beautiful. And I really was able to identify with that. I've learned a lot in the years of painting and actually talking to people before, after process.
All right, well, let's hold that thought for a second. Let's go to another one. Now, what is it that you've learned over the years talking with people about art?
Well, I have reaffirmed the belief that I have in terms of showing the imagery to children especially. This piece was also a part of the Gold Collection. And essentially in the Gold Collection, I was trying to say, look, we have a responsibility with these children. They're our children. And we're failing them. There are things that we are not doing that we need to do. We need to pay attention and get on the ball and get on with it. And if they're failing, then we're failing. But this particular image right here, something a person needs to do for themselves. I don't want your help. I just need to be able to have the satisfaction of doing it for myself. And you'll find a lot of the images that I do of boys and girls, but you probably notice it more with the boys. They're often wearing a tie because our public schools wear uniforms. So as a teacher, I always have my camera with me. And most of these children didn't model for me. I look across the field, I'd see them at lunchtime, and I photographed them. So a lot of the shots are candid shots.
Did you get a waiver for that?
No.
It's a joke.
No, I feel like if ABC News is on the street and they photograph you on the street, they don't get a waiver for it. You on the street.
I understand. Okay, and what's this piece about?
No, that's it. It's about some things a person has to do for themselves. I get the feeling that the child in the background wants to step in and do it, or he's telling them that maybe you're not doing it right, and I can do it. So
I got you. Right. The watchful eye of the taller child.
Yeah.
Of the older brother. All right, we're having food today. What's up?
I think all families, I think it's a universal thing that families gather in kitchens. And that's where lots of conversations take place. Sometimes it's the warmest place to be in the winter. And this is a small pastel piece. And that was it. That was my family in the kitchen. I'm always pulling out my camera whenever if people come inside my space. I'm grabbing my camera first, looking for those shots where you're not posing for me, but shots that feel universal, that feel in the moment, not rehearsed, and not too formal either. It just tells the story of our lives.
Right. This tells a story of like people getting together to eat, to share.
And talk, yeah.
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 Now what's the 411 on this piece here? This is a very interesting piece.
Well, as I said, my children don't model for me. And I would have my camera with me every day at school. And we have assemblies, so prayer is still held in our public schools. And for some schools, there's an assembly every day. Other schools, maybe they have it twice a week. So when the children stood to pray, that's exactly how they were. And I looked up and I suddenly saw these different hand gestures of how people pray. And I remembered assemblies when we had to stand and either the prayer was long and so you kind of fidgeted a little bit, but that's what it was. It's each in her own way, and then there's the brother piece that goes along with it. But I liked it because the uniforms are the same as one of the things that tied them together. But in terms of the races that are present there, that's how they were standing in the row. So I just caught exactly what it was.
Wow, yeah, this is a good piece. Says a lot.
I thought so. I'm pleased with it.
Yeah.
And the brother piece even more. Is he up next?
Let's see.
Yeah. And so I taught at a very small school, and we have a small Indian population that come to Bermuda to work. But even in terms of getting all the skin tones that are there, my experience has been, historically speaking, if there were going to be children in a book, they would pick brown-skinned children. They wouldn't have been the darkest, and there they were. And I was happy that I was able to capture them as I was, and the whites of their school shirts and the feeling of light in the room. I was very pleased with it, again, because it's natural, and it takes me back to that time and place.
And what is the medium here? What tools did you use?
Just soft pastel on a fabric board that I prepared myself, probably linen, unprimed.
Okay.
I was looking around and testing lots of surfaces at that time. And so I just adhered my fabric board to plywood, and put a ground on it and get to it. So that's that textural effect that's really noticeable in those pieces. And
Now, is this the brother piece or the piece we saw before?
This is a brother piece. These two are like 22 inches square, I think.
Oh, okay. Nice size pieces.
This is about politics in school. When you've been a classroom teacher, you notice the politics. And there's no politics like the politics of girls. Girls are a whole different ballgame.
How so?
Well, they struggle with friendships. They almost want to own the friend. If you're mine, you can't be hers too. It's a very territorial thing. And this is a piece that I always show to elementary school children whenever I go to speak with them. What do you think is happening in the story? And the girls know the story. They know the story. And then I started showing it to other children. It didn't matter if the children were black or white, they knew the story. And then I got a chance to show it to a few Asian children, and they knew the story. So there is a universality about the story. The difference for me as an artist is that I'm telling the story through my eyes, but the story is as old as people are. And so there's that hand that's, I'm kind of sorry. Maybe I don't really want to say I'm sorry out loud, but I suspect the doll has something to do with this madness that was going on, and they're trying to find their way back. And the last time I showed this to a group of children was in May. And I said, why do you think the artist paints what she's painting about? And he says, well, maybe, the kid said, maybe you lived it in your own life. I said, I have. He said, and maybe you want to teach us something? And I started to ask the question more and more, well, have you ever been the person who hurt somebody else's feelings? I thought they were all going to say no. They said, yes, I have. Have you been the person who's been hurt? Yes, I have. So you've been all those people. And the cool thing about within the painting is that you see and identify all those different parts of yourself.
Right, right.
The possibility for very, very deep and meaningful conversations can come from imagery if the imagery is relatable to the viewer.
Just to something. In other words, this ties into your revelation about making art having a purpose, not just art for art's sake.
Absolutely.
Right. Now, when I saw this piece, I thought of you.
Why?
Because you're a teacher. This is like a teaching scene.
Right, it was. This was the principal. Caught these kids in the hallway, And she was actually there with them, so she didn't have to model for me. And it tells it's the whole story is there. I mean, Norman Rockwell did that kind of image. And when you come from a place as small as Bermuda is, you pick up children's books because they try to make children's books sell to the broadest possible audience. You lose the authenticity about your space and what makes your part of the world what it is. It has to give way to this generic nothingness.
Yeah, one size fits all, right?
Exactly. And so one of the wonderful things that I'm able to do, being based here and moving around in this space, is to tell a story which obviously has a universal quality to it, meaning to it, but it also has this specificness. You know, I know that uniform, the children will say. I know what school wears that color. So there's that part that's just for them. And then there's the part that everybody else can share too. Makes me think a lot about Bob Marley's music. He wrote it for his own people, but it had such a universal quality that it was good for everybody. And 20, 30 years later, it's just as good as it ever was.
Exactly, right. So now, it makes me ask the question, do you have a children's book?
Yes, I've illustrated 3 children's books.
Oh, really? Okay. How modest we are. And what are the names of those books?
Oh, is it not in the slide? Is it not in the slideshow? Okay.
I
I
think
did.
so.
No, must have got edited out. It doesn't matter. I did one about the elections in South Africa. It was called The Day Gogo Went to Vote. It's great because it was translated into the 6 major South African languages. Walter Sisulu's daughter-in-law was the writer for it, so it was a very unique opportunity for there to be a South African writer, a Bermuda illustrator, and an editor that was sitting in New York someplace. It really did feel a very important thing to do in 97. So that was very special. That was my first children's book that I'd done with Little Brown Publishers. Then I did one with Simon & Schuster about the Juneteenth celebrations. Valerie Wilson Wellesley was the author of that one. And you guys know about Juneteenth. We don't celebrate it, but that's what that book was about. And then the last one was The Granddad Tree, which was a book that was very text-light, not a lot of text in it for younger children, but it dealt with the fact that just like the seasons change, people come in and go out of our lives. People die. Granddad died, but the tree was planted to remember him. So I really do try to get substantive work to do, to get a handle on, so that there's this opportunity to grow, enjoy the beauty of the image, but to get something much more meaningful from the
exactly
whole
right. And for me, that's very important. A lot of stuff out there is just, to me, I call it art for art's sake. It doesn't motivate me. It's just, they may have good technique, but it's not really saying too much, All right.
We in Bermuda fly lots of kites at Good Friday. It's a cultural tradition. But when we're just knocking around and making, a kite for any day, we do what are called brown paper bag boxy kites.
Okay.
And, made from the brown paper bags that you bring your groceries home in usually. And I wanted to do a father and son image. I have been painting about wanting to focus on the issue of Black men and Black boys for a long time. And then one day I had this epiphany that for as much as I was trying to do a positive thing, I had not talked to my subject. I had not approached Black men and said, what do you find difficult about parenting? How are you finding the experience of parenting? That talk, and not taking for granted that I knew the answer. Because I was a Black woman, that I knew the story of the Black man as father. It sounds a simple thing, but there you have it. And I had this model come with his son. The idea was that they would make a kite and I would get a chance to paint it. I think this was one of 2 paintings on the theme. And he arrived with 2 children and he said, well, wifey couldn't sit with the baby, so I had to bring them. I don't know how we're going to do this photo shoot with a baby. And I said, women do it all the time. You'll be fine. So there's a baby with the glue in his hands. Is he wanted to get in the mix too. So actually it worked out a great photo shoot.
I see. I didn't know it was a kite. I thought they were studying or something, you know.
You see the cross sticks there? Yeah.
I see that now. Yes, that you explained it. Right. I got it. Yeah. Very nice. You know, I'm gonna try to make one of those box kites later on today. Whoops.
It just is what it is. No big story to tell.
But I like this piece because of the color. I like the yellow. It just stands out. It's like, yeah, man.
Sun. Yes.
Yeah, you know, it's like it's like the yellow is exciting, but the face is like contemplative. You know, like just thinking about something. You know?
And it was. I think we had Grub Day at school. And Grub Day means that they didn't have to wear uniform that day. Maybe they pay $1 to come out of uniform and they give the money to a charity or something like that. So, like I said, having a telephoto lens, I would just watch the groups of children who might be quite a distance away from me and just watch what they were doing. And all kinds of games and imaginary things go on with them. But it was a way to get them without them being conscious of having that eye on them. So it's much more.
That's probably the better way to go.
It is. If you can go that way, it's the best way to go. This is my daughter. And I had her as my model for many years until she reached about age 12 and she decided she didn't want to do the model thing anymore. But I loved having her as a model because I trained her to be the model I needed her to be. And so I would say, well, you look kind of nerdy doing that. And she'd say, you haven't told me what you want me to do. What am I supposed to be thinking right now? So it was great having her as a young person be a model. Imagine this. Can you be like that? I had that unique opportunity to work with her like that. But this particular day, she was actually in that mood. And I love it because it's so real. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mother, every time my mother walks past this piece, she says it out loud to the child. She says, what is the matter, Whitney?
Yes, right.
Oh, you never get the answer, but you keep asking, you know, what is it? And then it's that quality that everybody thinks of children as these smiling, happy. And my memory is that childhood is actually a tumultuous time, really. Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes, you know.
It's kind of scary, isn't it?
Scary, sometimes feeling that you have no control over your life, what's going to happen to you next. Fearful without having a language to express it. And when I saw that emotion, it was yes. Can I pull this one off?
Now she sat there and created this emotion.
No. I just caught her. This was Catch It Raw. This was Catch It with the camera.
Okay. And what is your daughter's name?
Whitney.
Whitney. And what is she doing now? She's an artist too?
You know, I think she worked really hard to stay away from it, but I'm going to see what happens when she hits about 40. She's in Vietnam right now, and I think not like one of the competition from your mother or whatever, they go way the other direction. Either that or they follow right behind you. They're one of those 2 extremes. But every once in a while she'll send me something. She says, well, I've been working in waxes too, Mom. These are encaustic pieces right here. And she'll send me something small that she knocked out one evening while she was there playing with the wax. So
what is she doing in Vietnam?
Right now she's teaching English as a second language.
Oh, okay. Cool, man. Cool. All right. And she has the proper accent, right?
Proper
accent, Bermudian accent.
Well, that's a different story. I think the Asians are of the persuasion that you can't be black and have English be your first language. So she's running into a whole other thing there.
Okay. How long has she been there?
If you're black, you must be African. If you're African, then English can't be your first language. We want people whose English is their first language, please. She's been now 4 years, 2 years there, then 1 year in Saudi Arabia, and now back to Hanoi.
Oh, she's a world traveler. Go ahead. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, let's see what we got now. I think we're about at the end now. Oh, we got one more. Here we go.
Again, this is from the series, The Gold Collection, and I wanted to show children reading. I wanted to show them engaged in something that wasn't a passive activity, didn't have a ball involved in it. It had a different kind of engagement. And I've got one of my pet peeves right now is that we tend to put in front of our children, we'll put music in front of them, but not classical music. And they start to see the world as being a very narrowed world. You know what I mean? So sometimes I do father and son paintings or whatever. I'll go out of my way and find a father who's a scientist just so they can see him with his lab coat and see that that's for you too. You know, any of it's for you.
You know, it's interesting that you said that classical musical piece. I mean, it's very important to have exposure to that.
Absolutely.
Because the way it's composed is mathematically, you know, interesting. There's more than one rhythm.
That's right.
The current music today specializes in one rhythm, 4/4 time. And
yeah, and the diversity. You know, I remember once I was doing a trade show in New York, and I had these pictures of these women on the beach, and two black women walked up and they were looking, and they didn't know that I was the artist. And one was laughing to the other one and said, "Look at that! Imagine that, black people on the beach." I was like, "What? You've got all the Carolinas, you've got all this coast, you got black people in the Caribbean and Africa, and you think it's strange for black people to be on the beach?" But in a way, it doesn't really matter. It says something about what is the scope of my world. And the wonderful thing about art is that it crosses language barriers. And even though it's possible to misread an image in terms of what you're seeing, because it's possible to miss the message of a piece, even when you're trying to paint something very literal. It does have a universality about it, and it does open conversations. I know I did a painting of a black bride with her mother was helping her dress. And I teach adults here as well, and I teach seniors, a lot of people that have never picked up a piece of charcoal to work with ever before in their lives. And I show them the painting and I say, "What do you think is happening in this picture?" And the white women might say, "Oh, I think that the mother is giving her final instructions, and wishing her well in the marriage and stuff." And then I said to the black women, "What do you think is going on in this picture?" And they said, "I think the mother is saying, are you sure you want to do this?" And so one of the wonderful things is that there's this opportunity through imagery to begin a dialogue. Most especially when you have people that come from different societies, or even within societies, difference in culture, to look at the same thing and to hear how that image can be a jump off point for some very meaningful conversation.
yeah, that's true. However, if you don't have access to the images, maybe you don't have access to the conversation.
Access to the images, and then you've got to have access to the people. You have to have that diversity. It's them being together in a space and saying, "Oh, I didn't see that. What I saw when I looked at it was." And of course, it's because you're bringing your history with you to the image. But that happens a lot in my teaching, and it really doesn't matter where you began or what you're involved in. If you go into it far enough and deep enough, you'll find everything there is to learn in life is contained in every single thing you could go to if you go into it far enough. The parallels are there, the lessons are all there in everything.
So how did you come up with this cosmopolitan view?
From practice and from teaching. I found I am a very good teacher. When I was in public school, I didn't feel like a good teacher at all. I didn't feel like a successful teacher. I felt very much a failure. In fact, I was convinced I don't like teaching. And the minute I left and constructed a teaching environment on my own terms, you know, you've got to take the whole person in when you're going to teach. So for my studio, I put a pot of soup on the stove in the winter. And
Hold on for a second.
Yeah. So I'll put a pot of soup on in the kitchen in the winter.
Yeah.
And I only have a maximum of 6 or 7 students that I ever teach at one time. And that creates an intimate environment. And people may come to learn about art, but they'll go away with a feeling of having grown in some areas that they're not even quite sure how to categorize. Because
yes. I mean, because, you know, what I'm learning from you is that you're able to go into the invisible, as I call it.
The invisibles?
And you go to the unseen. You know, all the data's in the unseen, all the information's in the unseen. And you bring it out into the seen through the art.
Oh, okay.
You have a technique, the ability to do that.
Okay.
Most people don't do that.
I always think of what I do as being very, very literal, you know. But a few years ago, I met somebody who became my mentor for a few years. And she said to me, "You've got to tell your story." And I said, "Well, my goodness, I can't work any more literal than I'm working." And she said, "Because you've lived with your story so long that you think you're telling it, but you aren't. You have to help other people connect to where you're coming from." And that's when I started writing as well as painting, that it wasn't enough. In fact, it was doing a disservice to the viewer to just put an image there and say, take from it what you want. Nobody writes that way. They set a context for the writing. It's happening during this period of time and under these conditions. And then they deliver up for you the message of which you can take what you want. But to just put an image there without a context for it is crazy. So I'm a child of the 50s. It makes sense that I'm concerned about what I'm concerned about, that imagery that wasn't there for me, that I try to put there for children, and how important I know it is for you to be able to see yourself and to believe that something beautiful that's not in your life, there might be a chance for you to get it in your life if you can see it outside of yourself. Then maybe one day it will be within yourself. So that's...
So I guess as within, so without applies, right?
Pardon me?
As within.
That's
so
right.
without.
That's
so
right.
Without. Right.
Yeah.
All right. What are these ladies doing?
This piece is called The Curiosity. Right down across the street from my house is the biggest public beach in Bermuda. It's Horseshoe Beach. And I took my family down some years ago. And I asked everybody to wear a simple cotton nightgown, something that is timeless. I want timelessness quality to the work. And we went somewhere near evening. It's hard to shoot when the sand is so bright. The light is so great on the beach.
Okay.
White. So we went later towards evening. And I just conducted quite an extensive photo shoot of walking around them. And the curiosity is the child. With the women together, the age groups. And it's funny, I look back, sometimes you look back at earlier work and it feels really weak to you. And then other times you look back and you realize you were able to capture a timeless quality, something that says something about family or about people being together in a kind of quietness, in an unhurriedness, in an unhurried way.
Right. Well, that's what I see here. And I do see the different levels of women, You have the focal point, even the man's focus on the baby.
Yeah. So that's what that was about, curiosity.
And the next one here is this is the swimming piece.
Yeah. You know, we don't swim all year round here in Bermuda. Most locals say it's too cold to swim in the winter. So as a child growing up, when June would roll around, school would finish the end of June. When June would roll around, we just want to get home after school and go swimming, jump off the rocks, and children still do that a lot. And I realized that I hadn't really ever painted much about that aspect of island life, of coastline life. And so I've done a few paintings since which of children swimming. It just
Is this near your house?
This particular place is not, no. The beach is near my house, but on the North Shore of Bermuda is more rocks and ocean, but no beaches. The beaches are all on the southern side. So children growing up often will jump off the rocks. Not necessarily, I wasn't a great diver or anything, but we would jump. That would be what we do: climb up high and jump, and then swim to the rock and jump, and you know.
Wasn't that kind of dangerous?
Well, I think even as a child, you learn what height is comfortable for you, and you grow with it. That's what we did, you know.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's all we have in the queue.
So
We're gonna go back to another one. Oh, this is the next. Yeah, what's this all about? These white houses here.
I think I just wanted to include something that was not about people, but the buildings in the back of town. Some very old buildings.
Now, are the buildings white?
Sunlight.
Is that the color there? A lot of buildings are white.
Those buildings were white. Yes, I've amped them up a lot. I've exaggerated the whites, and as artists are inclined to do. But one thing about Bermuda, I spent years. I went to college in Boston, and I spent some time in England in school. And one thing I missed was the quality of light and the color of the ocean. Those two things caused me great trepidation just trying to get through without seeing that. So light is very important. And this picture, even though it doesn't have any people in it, I do this kind of thing some too. But the people in Bermuda had largely been ignored. And when I started painting the people of Bermuda, nobody else was painting people.
Oh, really?
And the one or two galleries that were around didn't want my paintings because they would say, tourists don't want to buy that. Go paint some beaches. So that's the place I've come from some 35 years ago. And so I believe in the people of Bermuda.
Speaking of gallery, now you have your own gallery?
I do.
Oh, okay. And how often do you show your work or just anybody's work? How does that
work? I carry just my work. I don't have a lot of space. I carry just mine, and I managed to teach from my home as well. So it's all under one umbrella. It's where I live. It's where I do it. It's where I make it happen.
The gallery is at number 2 Turtle Place, right?
Yeah, no turtles around, but that's
And so tell me now, what about this National Press Club thing you were involved in? What's that all about?
I think it was year before last. No, so what do you call it? You know how a country has, I can't think of the word right now, sort of has ambassadors?
Yes.
That work in other countries, right? And they were throwing a reception for the Black Caucus in DC, and thought that it might be kind of nice if they had a few artists come and show their work and be a part of reception and things like that. So I got a chance to go there and speak about what I believe is the value of art and why it's important for everybody to see it. Because normally when I show the work, white people say, that's very nice. So sort of like, why are you showing it to us? Like, why don't you show it to who needs to see it. And I said, I am showing it to who needs to see it, because you need to be able to see that humanity comes in dressed up in colors that don't always look like you. And it's important to remember that, because you don't always see it. And when you don't see it, it's easy to not remember it. So
let me just ask a question here. Did I understand that you were saying that some people would ask a question about, why are you showing this to me?
yeah.
It's art.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised. I mean, it's been 30 years, and sometimes, I mean, I can remember showing art and having white people say to me, but I don't see anybody that looks like me.
And
I think in the beginning it used to anger me, and I had to get to the point eventually where it wasn't like somebody pressing my buttons. I had to get to the point where you could just answer a question without it.
so do you think that perception is persistent, or has it sort of like faded away?
I think it depends where you're showing and where people are coming from, you know, what they're about, how they receive it. Again, it's your viewer in some sense being on the same page that you're on, at least from the standpoint that they understand what it is that you're doing. Not that they necessarily agree with or anything, but that they understand where it's coming from, and that's the responsibility of the artist to do that. And outside of that, it's so I get not lots of opportunities, but a fair number of opportunities to go out and speak to groups about what I believe is the value of art and why there's a need for public art, which we don't have anywhere near enough of it. And talking to people about what do you want from your art, that it's important that the viewer become more knowledgeable rather than being passive about it. You get what you deserve. You need to ask the artist to tell you about what they're doing. If they can't tell you about it, if there's nothing to tell you about, maybe you don't want their art. You know, how do you say to the viewer, you know, this is why I believe you need this? Because if you're a mother and there's this lovely painting of you, of this woman who's talking very nicely to a child and interacting, and you find yourself like a raving lunatic on a Friday afternoon shouting and screaming, you want to be able to look up on the wall and be reminded. Remind yourself. Something that pulls you back to your greater self, that says, this is the person I want to be. I don't want to be this person that's shouting in the space.
Right.
Art can't do that, pull you back to yourself. That's what is that reminder of, I'm greater than being like this in this moment. This is what I strive for. And that's why you need to have it in your space. That's why it needs to be there. Not one more pretty thing that you don't notice. It's there to be this reminder to pull you back.
So in other words, for you, you're saying that art is a function of
Absolutely.
Self-identity.
It better be. I think it needs to be for us. I think we're in a unique position in America. I think we are, in a sense, in the belly of another group of people. We live in the belly of America. And even though I'm in Bermuda, it's still the belly of America, because I turn on television, it's your television that comes up on cable television. It's so everything that is America is here more than Britain is, even though...
Well, there's only one TV, man.
There you go. There you go. It needs to be able to have a real function in our lives.
Well, but Sharon, the Martians always only land in the United States. They don't land anyplace else. And they only land in New Mexico.
Oh, okay. I understand New Mexico is a good place for them.
Yep. I mean, I can testify to that. but yeah, you're right about the TV thing, and it's really just so. I like to hear what you're saying. It's so hopeful, because we're living what I call a monolithic society, you know, across the board, and we have someone like yourself talk about the function of art, I get excited because most people don't talk about function, they talk about beauty.
It's so hard to, it's so hard sometimes because it feels like you're going, like it's all uphill. You have no control over what happens on television. It's a negative image. I said to my mother, you know, gee, I'm looking on the smart TV trying to find a good movie for you to watch. And then it's a black movie, but the message is all nasty. Or
Right.
it's
Right.
so ghetto. It's so crass. It's like it, and this constant diet of this until you can't even see how crass it is anymore because that's all it ever is. And compared to some of the other stuff, it's good. And you just demand so much less from it. And I had to wake up one day and say, I have no control over what happens on the big stage in terms of television, but I do have control and responsibility for the imagery that I turn out there. I'm responsible for that.
There you go.
And, I think that we as people have to hold each other accountable because you really do get better work that way. You get better quality work when you can hold me accountable and I can hold you accountable.
And who are some of the people that you work with in accountability?
I'm still looking for them. And I don't really say that tongue in cheek. I mean, I absolutely mean it. I don't think it necessarily takes a lot of people, but to get on that page, the page at least where we can agree on some very basic things. What needs to be, what's the messages that need to be hammered home right now? What's going to be good for our people? And we don't live in an era that's where that message is high. It would have been in the 70s. That's not really the time we're in right now. I mean, you could say I'm marching out of step with time right now because we in some ways we're in a society for moral decay. There's a lot of that around, and yet in spite of it, it's where my life is right now. I'm alive right now. My head works and my hands work, and so I just got to do what I can do with the time that I have.
Exactly. Do what you do.
Absolutely. But I'm always looking for that somebody to team up with, to see what is possible to do when you take maybe 2 strengths or 3 strengths and you combine that effort and you say what is possible.
What is possible is what you envision.
Yeah. So, until those connections get found, I'll just keep doing what I do.
All right. Well, that's about all we got for the day today. It really just feel like we're just scratching the surface of this jewel here, Sharon Wilson, ladies and gentlemen. She has so much to say. She's been in the game for quite a while and has accumulated a lot of interesting comments and experiences. Now, Sharon, how can people get in contact with you?
They can find me on Facebook. I got a website, BermudaArt.com, Bermuda_art.com. They can look me up in the directory and call me. I'm listed.
Okay, very good.
I'm out and about, especially on Facebook. I think it's easy to find me on Facebook. I have a few little video clips that I've been playing with on YouTube. So I've got a little channel on YouTube, and I try things out there just to see what kind of marriage one can make between the image and a message. The message.
And then how will we find you on YouTube? How will we? What name can we look for?
If you just search Sharon Wilson, Bermuda artist, maybe if you just search Sharon Wilson, maybe there's lots of Sharon Wilsons out there.
Could be.
Sharon Wilson, Bermuda artist. I think you'll see my channel come up with all my little video clips there.
Okay, great. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we close out?
No, just to say that it's great to find people like you around who think that messages are worth getting out there to a broader audience. And I just really believe that our people deserve a lot better than they're getting right now. So I'm looking to make it better every day.
There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us again here with Bill. Thank you, Sharon. That's
Thank
Sharon,
you.
ladies and gentlemen. Thank you and goodbye. Just don't
Thank
go
you,
anywhere
Bill.
just yet. Don't
Bye.
go, don't go, don't go, don't go.